up or for drawing on. It's not the kind of energy you'll get out in California. You get a great energy out there. It's not the kind you get at certain specific sites. But it is this absolutely drawing on the power of the earth kind of energy that's here. It's why there's so much blue in all of our names. The Blue River, Blue Ridge, Little Blue, all these blues are because of an energy that can actually be seen. We've got so much pollution it's hard to see it now. That was where they came from, because there's an actual color that is associated with this kind of energy. I just thought you'd like to know it. Whenever I pass these things out about the heart force, it always reminds me to tell you about that, okay? So it's an interesting place, but it's not a place where most people stay. Most people just wake up here and then take what they are and go somewhere else. A few of us stay. Okay? That takes care of that. Now, this little short piece was an excerpt out of something called The Training, which I encountered many years ago, and I thought it was very good, so I thought we would share it with you. And it's about what a guru is. Okay? A guru cannot give you anything you do not already have. It is his function to cause you to have a continuous and unbroken experience of what you already are. The guru is not a leader of a group, organization, religion, or body of people who believe certain things or act in certain ways. The guru is the grace-bestowing power of God, the power of your own self projected outside yourself to reveal yourself to you. The guru is not a human being, an individual, a body, a personality. The guru is a cosmic force, and the only reason you're in contact with this force is because your karma says you're ready. The way you know a true guru is not by the way he talks or acts or how he appears or dresses or behaves, nor by his words or his ability to charm you or entertain you or fascinate you. The only way you have contacted a real guru is if your life begins to change. If you notice a transformation beginning to happen in yourself, because a guru changes your life. A guru frees you. This is his only function, his only purpose. The guru has no motives in any of his words or actions except that you see yourself the way he sees you, as a brilliant, shimmering manifestation of God. Okay? And that's something that pretty much we believe. There was a magazine called Soviet Life and another one called United States, I think it was, maybe it was America, I don't remember. The one was published in Russia in English, Soviet Life, and it was only sold by subscription to Americans. This was during the Cold War, during the height of the Cold War. And at the same time, the one was published in Russian in the United States and sold only by subscription to Soviet citizens. They did not talk about warfare or anything like it, but they talked about farming and the arts and just everyday life, things that were going on in their countries. And they both had letters to the editor's column. One of the articles that appeared in Soviet Life was a very interesting article about a psychic who was working with, or actually several psychics who were working with the police, both in criminal investigation and finding lost children, things like this. Well, following this article, there were 2 letters received in the letters column from Americans who wrote, "How dare you publish this stupid idiocy," and went on, "Cancel my subscription immediately." So I thought I had to write something in response. So this was basically my letter, which I wrote in response to their letter to Soviet Life. But we've also found a few people have even posted it in science laboratories here and there. It's called The Psychics and Science. Somewhere in the beginnings of civilization, after language had been invented, man began to notice and take note of what was happening around him. When he discovered certain things which always seemed to work in the same way, he called them facts. Soon he was collecting facts and organizing them into groups which became known as the sciences, and they represented what man knew about the universe he lived in. But science did not then and does not now define the universe. It only defines those parts of the universe which are known and understood by man. Furthermore, any 20-year-old physics textbook is proof that our so-called facts are only working hypotheses, waiting to be validated, amended, or even disproven. Too many of today's scientists have come to accept as true the belief that science defines the universe, and they condemn as unreal and foolish anything they cannot prove scientifically, even if it works. There are many fraudulent psychics in the world. There are also many fraudulent scientists, willing to take credit for another's work, to falsify results of experiments, etc. It would be foolish to discredit all for the culpability of some. When science offers benefits to me, I gladly use and appreciate them. When my own or another's intuitive ability offers benefits to me, I embrace them. And if a psychic can help the police solve a crime or locate a lost child, who cares whether the scientist can define it or reproduce it in a laboratory? Okay? All of this is sort of background. What we're getting is there. At least that's background to the class. Not just going time. Now, these are a list of terminology. Take two pieces of paper because you've got three sides. One has two sides, the other has three. And the whole list is 3 pages. I'm going to go through it very fast. If you have any questions, fine. Sometimes I'll stop and mention something about a class I'm going to be teaching. Astral projection, also called astral travel, out-of-body experience, or OB, is to leave the physical body and to go with or without a spirit double to a place or time other than where the physical body is located. Some dream, for a special case of OOB, also see bilocation. Astral travel, again, astral projection. Astrology is the science of the effects of the movement of the sun, the moon, and the planets on the earth. Now we know the earth moves around the sun, but the apparent movement of the sun. But it's the whole thing about the relationship within the solar system. And its relationships particularly on people. They do use it also in setting up satellites, and at least for quite some time they have consulted it just because it is a part, it uses a lot of astronomy. And knowing the difference, pulls and pushes, gravitational, is important. Anyway, that's what we do. Automatic, we do have one class that's not listed in the 13. The last class will be a class on basic astrology. And the thing you filled out will get you the astrology chart, computerized one. The course will be taught by Dan Head. He happens to be a policeman, but he's been teaching astrology longer than he's been a policeman. And that is included only in the 13-week course. It is not offered as an individual course. A lot of our courses are offered as individual, and that one is not. It isn't even mentioned. Okay? Automatic writing is writing done not under the conscious control of the writer. An aura is an envelope of energy surrounding any body, which is indicative of various conditions of the body. In more complex organisms, there are numerous layers, each with distinctive properties: mental, physical, emotional, psychic, spiritual, etc. Biofeedback is a method for learning voluntary control of normally, unconsciously controlled bodily functions, such as blood pressure. Channeling is the act of communicating with a discarnate spirit by allowing it to use your voice and or body. Also see the term medium, which is the older term. Clairaudience is extrasensory data perceived as sound. By the way, the word extrasensory is just exactly that. We think of the senses as seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and feeling. Those are the normal 5 senses. Extrasensory simply means you're picking them up from some sense other than those 5. Clairvoyance is extrasensory data perceived either visually or as thought. Colorology is the study of the vibratory effects of colors. Deja vu is used to talk about an experience which feels as though it has happened before. You know, you walk in some place and you know things about it, and you've never been there before. That's deja vu. Sometimes it's much more complicated than that. Discarnate is one, either the noun, which is a spirit or being without a physical body. or it is simply the adjective describing such. Divination is a method of obtaining knowledge of the unknown or of the future by means of omens, cards, tea leaves, stones, etc., any form of divination. Dowsing, also called divining, water witching, and in special cases rhabdomancy and radiothesia, is the location of underground water, minerals, or hidden objects located by means of a dowsing or divining rods, pendulum, or other instrument. It's also used for answering questions. And again, the radiothesia is specific to medical diagnosis, where it's used in England and in Europe more than here. Ectoplasm is a semi-physical substance which is said to issue from the body of a medium and from which materializations form. I don't happen to believe in it, but that's still what the definition of it is. I've seen a lot of people who can convince other people it's there, but I've never seen anything that convinced me of it. That's just me. Empathy is the ESP of the emotional state of another, or an emotional awareness of another. Extrasensory perception is ESP, simply the awareness of events, objects, states, or influences that are other than your 5 normal senses. Hypnosis is a process for inducing a trance or for communication with your own subconscious. If you want to stop me with anything, and if you want to argue with anything, please do. As I said, I love a good argument. You get more information that way. Once in a great while, we even had skeptics take the class. Some people hated it. I always thought it was very interesting. The Kabbalah, or Kabbalah, depending upon how you want to pronounce it, is the occult Jewish religious philosophy based upon the Tetragrammaton, which is the YHWH, the 4 letters that stand in the place of God, because you were not supposed to write the name of God or speak the name of God. Therefore, they substituted these instead of writing it. So God became Yahweh, but it was actually sort of standing for Jehovah. Anyway, karma is a collective growth or credit of the soul within one life and through successive lives, and we will talk about that a lot more when we get into the class on reincarnation. Karmic debt is the concept that one soul can owe something to another soul based upon actions in a former life, which is an absurd thing. But that's, again, we get into that and why it's absurd. Well, actually, you can't owe something to somebody else because they can't control who you are. Only you can control who you are. They provide an environment, and that environment doesn't compel you. You allow it to compel you sometimes, but it's still you're doing it. So you can't owe them something since they were on their own to react to you, and they can't owe you something since you were on your own to react to them. You can owe things to yourself, though. Definitely, to grow. Drone photography is a means for photographing the aura. Levitation is the raising of objects or bodies in the air by psychokinesis or PK. Materialization is the sudden visibility in solid form or apparent solid form of an object or person. Some mediums claim to use ectoplasm for materializations. A medium is a sensitive who communicates with dead persons or other spirits, or who acts as a channel through which they can communicate by voice with others. Numerology is the use of numbers for divination of the essence of the person's name or the name of whatever. Out-of-body experience, again, to leave the physical body and to go with or without a spirit double to a place or time other than where the physical body is located. Some dreams are a special case. Palmistry, divination through reading the palm of the hand. Parapsychology is the science dealing with ESP and PK. PMIR is psi-mediated instrumental response. It is basically in a near-death situation. It is the response of an individual through ESP or PK to a situation in which the mental or physical survival of the individual is at stake. Such responses can be conscious or unconscious. A poltergeist comes from German words noisy ghost, and it embodies various paranormal events involving unexpected movement and or breakage of objects. It's also connected with noises or fire. Such activities frequently center around an emotionally disturbed teenager. I've seen them center around an emotionally disturbed adult, and I've seen them where you couldn't find a particular person around you and they seem to center. Possession is when a person or animal is under the mental and or physical control of a discarnate spirit. Precognition is prediction or knowledge of future events which can't be inferred from present knowledge. Psi is simply a term applied to paranormal events and abilities by scientists. The psyche is the spirit of the body. It's the mind plus the soul. Psychic is either a sensitive person or descriptive of paranormal events and abilities that can't be explained by established physical principles. Psychic surgery is the removal of diseased tissue without the use of physical instruments and without cutting the skin. Although lasers can do a marvelous job, I have never seen a psychic surgeon who wasn't just a good magician, and frequently a good con man. Most people with a lot of the people who validate psychic surgeons have like gone to Hawaii, and they've seen a psychic surgeon who diagnosed an illness they didn't even know they had and then cured them. And brought out a lot of gushy stuff, which of course there are a number of ways of doing, but anyway, I don't believe in psychic surgery. I absolutely believe in healing. But there's a difference. Psychokinesis is the direct influence of the mind on matter, especially to move or change it. Telekinesis is movement by PK. Teleportation is the telekinesis of an object or person, often the self, from one location to another. Psychometry is reading an object by ESP to obtain facts about the history and or future of the object, including people and events connected with it, usually through touching it. One of the funniest people with psychometry I ever knew was a Kansas City policeman who used to actually read crystal ball at psychic fairs. But his psychometry was the funniest in the world because he would take an object and the only thing he ever picked up from it was where it was. In other words, he would be able, by touching an object, to see where this object had been and be able to describe it. If it sat inside a jewelry box, he'd describe the inside of a jewelry box. If it was on a table, he'd be able to describe the things around it. But that's always what he got. He never got the people connected to it or anything else, just the surroundings around it. It's pretty fascinating. Anyway, radiesthesia is the awareness of the condition of objects or entities living or inert through sensitivity to radiation from the object or entity, and it is also dowsing with a pendulum. Reincarnation is survival after death through rebirth of the soul into another body. Retrocognition is the awareness of, precognition is the awareness of future events. Retrocognition is simply the awareness of past, and that's what you've been using looking for a lost child or solving a crime. Okay. Seance is a meeting of one or more persons with a medium, usually to communicate with discarnate spirits. And a sensitive is simply a psychic. Telekinesis, again, telepathy is the ESP of the thoughts or mental state of another. Theta is survival phenomena, which includes near-death phenomena. Trance is an altered state of consciousness, induced or spontaneous, which allows the individual to accomplish things not normally possible, or which allows another entity to communicate through the individual, as with automatic writing, seance, Ouija board. By the way, most of us, if we drive, go in and out of trances all the time because we are thinking about something and we're driving and we turn at the right places and we obey the traffic signals and all these things while actually our main thought is on something else. A trance state is not something unusual. It's something that just about everybody goes in and out of a number of times a day without thinking. The trance state we usually think about is a deeper state. In taking this class, in learning to read, whether it's cards or stones or whatever else, you're going to be in a light trance. It won't feel any different, but you're actually going to cut off concentration of the things around you and sort of allow yourself to become aware. And that's what the trance state does. The transmigration is the idea that reincarnation of a human soul can go into an animal body and vice versa. This is an idea accepted in some forms of Hinduism. Buddhism does not accept it. It is not a necessary belief aligned with reincarnation. Reincarnation is specific. That a dog would be a dog, a person would be a person, a flea would be a flea. Okay. The transmigration is the idea that we have to go through different animals to become who we are, or to be punished for what we are, or whatever. Okay? And then there are just a list of some common forms of divination. Any questions?
What would you say your specialty is?
Helping people discover who they are, not who I think they should be.
Through what techniques?
Whatever comes up. I work with NLP more than anything. But As far as specializing in the psychic, I thought for many years that I wasn't. And I thought I would be blind to it. And it was okay. I still believed in it. And then I found out I'd been using it all my life. I just never... You see, it isn't something separate. That's the whole thing. The psychic isn't something separate. We talk about psychokinesis and the ability to manipulate objects. A good auto mechanic is using it. He is more than just technically aware. He feels, he is in tune with. The person that takes care of your furnace, if he does a good job, or the refrigerator is doing it. A good cook. You can give the same prepared mix to 3 cooks. One will come out with something adequate, one will come out with something superb, and one will come out with something you wouldn't want to eat. And it's the thing is, they don't know the difference of what they're doing. A good cook, a good seamstress, a good surgeon. Certain forms of brain and eye surgery require a touch so delicate that they know that breathing would cause too much of a movement. So they actually, sometimes while cutting or doing it, will deliberately control their breathing. Their pulse is enough to do it, but they're controlling it. And it's a part of what they do. They don't think of it as something separate. They sort of concentrate their energy into what they want the movement to be, and the telekinesis is a part of it. Healing. Have you ever held hands with somebody? Have you ever comforted somebody? That's just a part of healing. These are different gifts that we all have. Some of us have more of one, some more of another. The Bible says that the Holy Spirit will give them to every man, severally as it will. In other words, some get several gifts, some get one. And the thing is, you may get only one gift in a much later life than you got in an earlier life when you were using even more. The amount of your gifts, the ability that you have as a psychic are not indicative of where you are in growth except to one degree. Only old souls are really very comfortable with the psychic. One of the most interesting classes we will teach is about soul ages, and that will be the 12th week. And we only offer that to people who've been in a class before. They're just, I don't want a whole bunch of people coming in for it. It's very time consuming. There's a lot of talking on my part, but there's also work that we have to do individually with each of you. And there are various soul ages. And to be in the class like this, you're probably an old soul. You might possibly be a mature soul. A young soul would run like hell from it, unless he's a skeptic that comes in to destroy the class. And he doesn't believe in anything. It's too scary to him. So, this is the kind of thing we do. By the way, the classes next week, we will have a class on Tarot. It is always the first active class we have where you're doing work, and the reason is, when you look at a card, you have to see something. And you ask your unconscious to cause you to notice something, to give you something that the person you're reading for needs. And you just can't avoid seeing something when you look at a picture. So that's why we use it. When we use blank dice, or stones, or psychometry, you're not getting that. You're having to supply more. And we sort of build so that you supply a bit more of your awareness and less of what's presented there. Okay? But anyway, everybody will be reading Tarot next week. Whether you've done it before, how many of you have? See, you're not going to learn a lot, maybe. You're not going to use a book, we can tell you that. You're going to learn to read it without looking up meanings anywhere. And without using a set meaning, because you're going to learn to use things by tuning into your unconscious. And one of the key words, one of the most important words in the entire psychic is the word allow. Never will yourself to be psychic. You have a will and you have an imagination. In any contest between the two, the imagination will always win. And that is because if you can't imagine a thing, even if it happens, you won't see it, you won't notice it. Imagining it isn't enough. You have to add will to imagination. But just having will alone in conflict with your imagination, forget it. It just doesn't work. Imagination is your most powerful tool. You have to imagine you can be psychic. And if you can imagine it, then you can learn to be it. If you can imagine being happy, you can learn to be it. If you can imagine learning something, then you can learn something. You won't necessarily learn what you expect to learn. In fact, you will very seldom learn what you expect to learn, because if you expect to learn it, you already know it. So when you learn something, it's always a surprise, one way or another. Okay? Normally we would have the class on magic third and the class on healing fourth, but John can't come in the fourth week, so we're going to have him for the second half of the third week. So we'll have our class on healing first. The class on magic is going to teach you to use magic in everyday life and how much a part of everyday life it is. The class on healing will go into a number of things, including Kakyan, which I think you'll find very interesting. And we may take a bit more of the second class to go into it a bit more too. Anyway, the fifth week will be stones. And you will learn about reading rocks, blank dice, pumpkin seeds, seashells, whatever comes up. Michael will be teaching that class. The class after that is psychometry. Drew will be doing that. That's in which you get feelings, pick up feelings of places, events, people from objects. We have an interesting collection of objects that we bring in that are rather diverse and have some interesting connections to them. And some rather bland ones. But we hope that you'll... and by the way, some of you may like one tool better than another. And that's the whole thing. Find out what appeals to you. Learn about the others. Find out what appeals to you. Don't expect everything to be something you really want to get involved in. Handwriting analysis is based upon brain function. And you can pick up individual bits of information about a person, but we include it in a psychic class because it's putting the bits of information together into something meaningful that allows you to actually have some understanding of the person. But we will show you the bits. This is very basic. If you're interested in more in graphology, we'll give you the name of somebody who you can go to for more further information on that. Numerology is the science studying the name. The more I see, the more I am convinced that nobody's name was ever chosen without some force being exerted to do it, because it's really kind of fascinating. People's names really end up expressing. People get their name, most people just think, oh, I decided to do it, or this. But it's amazing how it works. But you know what else is amazing? If you count the numbers wrong, you're still going to get some great information because it makes you look at yourself. So it's good that way, even if it's wrong. But the amazing thing is how accurate some of it is in helping us really understand who we are. Same with astrology. I think that's the great benefit of astrology, is not in predicting, but in helping you understand the forces that sort of most easily can be developed by yourself and those which will be the most difficult. It doesn't say you can't do anything. Astrology never tells you what you can't do. It just tells you what is the line of least resistance and the line with the greatest resistance. And everybody wants some challenges or they go nowhere. A chart without any squares or oppositions, that person just never does anything. They're probably born a couch potato. Let me see. Then we get to reincarnation and karma, and that whole class is about that. And I'm a Buddhist, so some of my ideas are a little different. But the next one is an out-of-body class, and we're going to have somebody who's a regular in the class because people are allowed to take this who aren't a regular. But Drew will always have someone who's been a member of the class who wants to be the guinea pig, laying down here in front of everybody. And so one of you gets to do that. And then we have dowsing. And the reason we have dowsing next, and dowsing, of course, every kind of psychic reading is a form of dowsing, actually. But dowsing using pendulum, Y-rod, and a few other things we'll have next. And Chuck Digby, who's been very active with the Dowsing Society and has been dowsing a great many things very actively for many years, is going to come in and do that. And I do a lot of talking during the first part, and then he does the actual dowsing, taking you through that. And the last, the 12th week is the Soul Ages. And the reason we have dowsing before that is because, and we all do offer reincarnation, karma, the out of body, the dowsing, and the Soul Ages as a 4-week mini course for some people. So there may be some come in for that. You want to be able to douse other people's soul age charts. You really don't want to do your own, so somebody else will do yours. Our ego's too involved in who we are. So you really want, but you want, once you understand, to be able to do it for your friends and loved ones and people like this. So we teach the dowsing just so you can use the pendulum, because that's how we douse the charts for everybody here. Okay? And then last week is astrology. Any questions? Does that cover what you're all here for, I hope? Good. Now I'm going to take you someplace you probably don't expect to go. And it has everything to do with this class, even though it doesn't seem to. And I think it has everything to do with the rest of your life, too. Would you please hold your hand in the air if you feel guilty about anything you've ever done? Then you better not. Okay. If you didn't happen to hold your hand in the air, please think of something you regret having been immature enough or stupid enough to have done. While the others think of something they feel guilty about, okay? Now think of something you feel guilty about and make it something important. Nobody's going to ask you what it is. And if they do, you just tell them it's none of their business. But think of something you feel guilty about and make it important. You all got it? Anybody needs me to wait? Okay. Now I want you to fill in this sentence regarding the thing you're thinking about. And I want you to tell me what you fill the sentence in with. You can use 1 word, 2 words, 3 words. I don't care how many words you use. I just want to know how you fill the sentence in. The sentence is, I would have done it differently if only I'd had more blank. Got it? I will tell you the most common, you don't have to be unique. The most common words for filling in that sentence, the 3 most common words are knowledge, awareness, and understanding. But courage, patience, belief in myself, self-control, all kinds of things can be used. And I want to know how you fill the sentence in.
Constant.
Information.
Self-confidence and experience.
Patience.
Experience.
Compassion. Time.
Understanding.
All right, we'll come back to time. Whenever somebody says time or money or something outside themselves, I always have to ask, because it's a valid answer. But you have to look and see, what do you mean by time? Do you mean, I did everything, I used all of my time the best I could? Or does it mean, I blew the way I organized my time? Well, you have to look. Sometimes you actually do use it the best, and you still run out of time. And sometimes it's just, you didn't organize well. And you always have to look when it's time or money, something like that. Now, the important thing is you all proved you're not guilty. That's the important thing. Because the definition of guilt is you could have done it differently and you chose a lesser path. And every one of you, every single one of you, told me there was something you didn't have enough of to have done it differently, right? Didn't you? Therefore, you do not meet the test of guilt. This society runs on 3 illusions. And the first one is guilt. There is a reality that replaces it. The reality is you're responsible for what you did. And there is a huge difference between guilt and responsibility. Guilt says you're a bad person because you did it. It focuses you on the past of what you weren't. And it holds you there carrying the stupid burden around for the rest of your life because you've been guilty. Responsibility says, hey, find out what you didn't have enough of. Your responsibility is to work on getting it. Until you don't repeat it. Until you have enough of what you didn't have enough of before. Make sense? Responsibility takes you into the present and pushes you into the future and tells you where you have to go. And responsibility gives direction to your life. How many of you have ever owned a cat? Hold your hands in the air. Now please keep your hand in the air if you've ever been able to make that cat feel guilty about anything. No way. You can't make a cat feel guilty. You can't even make a dog feel guilty. You just make them miserable. That you are upset with them because they're a pack animal and they want your approval. Half the time you can't get them to understand what they did wrong or why it's wrong. And if you weren't there, they'd go right back to doing it. Cat is not a pack animal. It doesn't want your approval. Therefore, you can't make it feel guilty at all. You can't even make it look guilty. Dick Van Dyke had always been a dog person. And somewhere he tells this wonderful story, and he got a cat. And he said if he had come home from the market and he had left a roast on the counter and his dog left alone in the kitchen had been unable to resist, he knew the dog would go, when he came in, the dog would go, "Oh, master, oh, I'm sorry, oh, forgive me, I don't know what I've done, oh, I don't know how I've done it." So he knew what dogs did. And he did happen to come home, and he did happen to leave a roast on the counter. And when he came in, the cat was there at the roast, and he expected the same reaction, but that's not what he got. What he got from the cat was, "Mine!" So please remember, at least be as smart as a cat. No guilt. No guilt. Think of something else you feel guilty about, by the way. Fill in the sentence. I would have done it differently. If only I'd had more blame. Does this make sense? When you fill it in, you see your responsibility. You take the time, right now, today, not necessarily this minute, but you take the time to go through things you feel guilty about, and you use that sentence. Some of you may no longer accept guilt. Some of you may have one enough. One example may be enough to show you the difference. For some, it may take 2 or 3. There may be some of you that it takes as many as 6 things. But if you keep showing your unconscious that you don't want guilt, that you want responsibility, you want to understand who you are and why you're here, your unconscious will quit giving it to you, and nobody else can give it to you. You can't make me feel guilty about anything. I can feel bad, I can feel stupid, but I will learn from what I do. Okay? They've had my classes before, some of them. So you see, they didn't come in feeling guilty. I am reminded when I do this, there's something I frequently tell the class, but sometimes I forget to tell them. There's a little limerick that I know the last 4 lines of, and I've known them since I was a little girl. And now I know why I remembered them. And somebody told me what the first line was, didn't have anything to do with anything, so I promptly forgot it again. But anyway, the last lines are, "There are others more beautiful far. My face, I don't mind it, for I'm behind it, 'tis the people in front get the jar." So, if I bug you, it's your problem, not mine. How many of you feel like you have failed in a relationship? Anybody? Very few of you don't feel you've ever failed in a relationship. That's amazing. How many of you feel like you failed at anything? Now, see, I don't think that's true. I think it was a learning experience. What did you learn from the experience you feel you failed at? With relationships, we learn what we do and don't need from, or can get from other people. We learn what we can and can't give to other people. But in every situation where we think of ourselves as having failed, if you'll look, you'll see you learned something. Didn't you? Can you think of an experience you had where you failed and didn't learn anything? Sometimes the only thing you learn is a field you ought to be out of. Sometimes you learn that you should try doing a thing another way. All kinds of different things that you can learn. Okay? Does this make sense? That's the second illusion. It's failure. By the way, in ancient Egypt, they did not have a word for guilt in their language. Non-existent. Buddhism doesn't have the concept of guilt. And Egypt didn't have a word for it. My husband used to teach hieroglyphics, that's all I know. Now they had a word for failure, and that's because a bridge could fail. A thing could fail, but they couldn't apply it to people. They didn't apply it to people. Reality is growth. Everything that can be seen as a failure is a matter of growth. You are not guilty of failing, you're responsible for growing. So you can just get rid of these burdens you've been carrying around on your back called guilt and failure. They don't belong there, they're done. Just throw them away. They tie you to a past when you were less mature. We don't come into this world perfect. We come in here to become, right? That's what life is about. The third illusion is the need for approval. If you will think of someone that has a lot of approval, whether it's someone you know or someone historically, and for pity's sakes, don't think of politicians because nobody knows who they are anyway. But if you will think of someone, there are two people that I always use as examples, George Brett and Whoopi Goldberg. Nobody has everyone's approval. No one. But there are many people that have a lot of approval. And you will find, whoever you're thinking about, that there is one thing that will be true of them. If they have a lot of approval, they don't give a hang whether they have approval or not. Nobody who has a lot of approval is doing what they do to get approval. They're doing it because it's what they are. They are being who they are. And in being who they are, there's such a feeling of rightness to it that anybody that can appreciate them does. But if you try to get approval, how many of you have tried to get approval from somebody? The more you do, the more they demand, right? Actually, that's perfectly reasonable. Because they don't see themselves as being there in a position to approve of you. In fact, if you want somebody to do something for you, do you go to somebody that won't do things for you or somebody that's done things for you? You'll go to somebody that's done things for you. And you don't think of you're going to give them approval, do you? You're thinking of going to get somebody to do something for you. And that's the way it is. Other people do not, unless they are very manipulative and they're really messed up, are not thinking about you. They're not thinking about you getting approval. They're thinking about themselves. Therefore, nobody is here approving of other people, except some parents who have the foggiest idea of what they're supposed to do as parents. Because that's not a job of parents. Parents are supposed to raise us to be who we are, not who they think we should be. Anyway, that's another whole class. So, the need to have approval is sort of crazy. If you are being who you are, you will attract to you people who can appreciate what you are. And no matter how much you may want to attract to you some particular person, if they can't appreciate who you are, what's the point? So be who you are and be open to whoever it happens to collect. Because one of the fascinating things is the people that can appreciate what you are going to be people that you really like what they are because you fit together like pieces in a puzzle. So don't worry about having approval. Now, this doesn't mean that you can just ignore the boss. When you have a job, you have to have the boss's approval. But if the boss asks you to do things that in your conscience you really feel are wrong, you should look for a new job. But the thing is, don't seek approval. Can't give me any white chocolate today, it's crazy. It's about being. The thing you are most often guilty of is failing to have approval. Almost all guilt is a failure to have approval. And it's somebody else at the center of who you are. Instead, you are responsible for growing and becoming whoever you can be. Does this make sense? Is there anybody here that this doesn't make sense to? Has a problem with this? Because this is very basic. You ask what I do. This is what I do. You know, the psyche is just a place to do it. It's a fun place to do it, though. Now, if you have all accepted that, there are two things I would like you all to say out loud. And when we get to the class on energy and magic, we'll talk about why I had you say it out loud. But for now, trust me and just say it out loud. I have a right to be who I am. Can you all say that? I have a right to be who I am. And I accept the responsibility for becoming whoever I can be. And I accept the responsibility for becoming whoever I can be. Now, if you have a little voice in there that was given to you by somebody else while you were growing up, who told you you can't be psychic or you can't do this or you can't do that, that limits you, you can tell your unconscious what you want to develop. By the way, I told them and I'll tell you, if you cross your arms like this, you're going to block most of what I'm saying. You'll hear it, but you won't use it. I'll show you. Everybody here, just do this. See what you feel when you do it? You begin to feel something you weren't feeling before you did that. It doesn't matter whether a thing starts with your thought, your emotion, your physiology, your body language. They're all tied. And this blocks. It's why Zen Buddhists cross their arms and legs when they're meditating because they want to block thought. Crossing arms and legs blocks thought. Okay? Bringing them together may focus thought, but crossing blocks. If you have, I had one son that if I wanted to talk to him, he would stand like this. And I wouldn't talk to him, he took his arms down. There was no point. There is no point in talking to anybody that you want to understand what you're saying if they're standing like this. Because they can nod their head, they can say yes, but they're blocking. And it'll just go away. If you don't like something I say, that's okay. You can draw on a piece of paper, or you can go in the air. You can talk to somebody after class and say that's a bunch of horse pocky, or whatever. Or you can use one of my favorite drawings, which is when I'm listening to a lecture, I typically do this. That's not a very good drawing. It's just a thumbs down. The ancient Romans. And it means no. If you listen to somebody teaching, you're accepting what they say unless you say no to it. You're buying things you don't necessarily want to buy. Frequently, you buy things you don't even know you bought. And I don't mean material things, I mean ideas. TV is very good at that. Anyway, having said those two things, you have empowered yourself to put new programs in. Now you'll have to learn to do it, you'll have to put them in because they won't just be there. But you have a right to say, hey, I can learn to do this, even if before you thought you couldn't. This is simply, and I don't just mean in the psychic, I mean in your whole life. Those words you say empower you to be the loudest voice you will ever hear. You have more authority on this earth for what you will be now than anybody else. But you still have to get rid of the garbage programs, which you've got thousands of. Or you're still going to be running with them. But whenever you encounter them, you can say, hey, I don't like that. Okay? It's like take there's one more thing I should tell you. You can't forgive anybody. Hey, if you're not guilty, they aren't either. What you can do is understand that they also were immature. They were coming from their pain and their need to grow in what they did, and they were thinking of themselves. You were just sort of out there as environmental factors. They may have done it to you, but they did it out of themselves. And it is their pain and their need to grow that they're expressing in the things that we take in and find hurtful. And the beauty is, once you actually understand this, instead of, whenever you forgive somebody, you have to hold on to the pain. You have to feel hurt by it. In order to forgive, you have to hold on to their guilt and the pain they gave you. But when you understand, it's like when a child does something, you see it's a child. And you let it go and you don't take it personally because you understand. And the same thing is true in a great big 6-foot-tall child. Once you understand, instead of forgive, then you let go of the pain. It's just a great benefit. There's a side effect. You can't get rid of the pain to understand, but you can understand and get rid of the pain. Okay? Any questions about any of this? By the way, on this, I probably should put the sentence on, but I've never put that sentence in here, which is the only way I know to get people to understand. I would have done it, yeah. But you'll notice that I'm talking about, there's one thing here that talks about pride and joy. Pride is a comparative word. Every time you say, I'm proud of myself, if you go up to somebody and say, I'm so proud of myself, I did this, it's as if you're saying they didn't. It just has that there. And if you talk about being proud of your kids, as if their kids weren't as good. So pride has this crazy thing attached to it. But if instead you'll say, I'm so happy I did this, it's amazing. They may want to bake your cake because they wanted to hit you with a rubber mallet if you were proud. So it's just a handy thing to remember. It doesn't, and that's why I put it in there. Pride is the flip side of the coin of guilt. The whole idea of guilt is you could have done something differently and didn't. And pride is, well, you could have and I did. So they sort of go together. That's why we put it there. And success, there's nothing wrong with success unless you think of it as an end point. Every goal you have has one purpose, to give you direction. And from a goal, the direction you get should take you toward something. And if along the way toward that goal you see a different goal you wouldn't have seen before, and you like it better, then switch. Because the focus, the whole point of a goal is to give you a direction toward which to walk, not necessarily to get you to something. Now, sometimes you get to a goal. When you do, you got to find a new goal. But if you don't get to a goal because you see something else that you'd rather go to along the way, that's fine. You haven't done something wrong to leave the first goal. And that includes marriage. Marriage is frequently a goal that people want to go towards something. And sometimes they find out along the way they're not going where they thought they were going, they're not growing, it's become a really nasty thing for both of them. There's nothing wrong with seeing a different goal. There really isn't. And if it isn't true in marriage, it certainly isn't true anyplace else. Goals give us direction. We need direction. We need a focus of where we're going in life. Does this make sense? Okay. Now I've got to come around. This is the hard part. I've got to come around to all of you. Except Michael, you can go over. John, what's your name?
Tobias.
Nice. Hi. You've been there. You know this. They haven't. So. I think I'll start at the center and work my way back. Would you please hold your arm out? Over here, thank you. Would you please try and resist me? Thank you. Would you please resist me? Thank you. Would you please resist me? Please try and resist. Thank you. Would you please try and resist? Thank you. Would you please resist? There you go.
7 minus 7 plus.
Okay. Here. Here. Don't do anything except what I say. Don't think something different. Please resist. Please try and resist. I didn't push nearly as hard the second time either. You understand that the whole point of this is that try means fail. It's about the definition of the word try. So don't try and do something. Do not try to do something. And if you know it and you're still using that word, then find a friend and make a pact with them. That anytime you catch each other using the word, you're going to put a quarter in the pot or a dollar or a dime, depends upon your financial state. Until both of you have broken the habit, and then treat yourselves to something. But don't use the word try. If you want somebody to do something, don't ask them to try and do it for you. Ask them to do it for you. And if somebody asks you to try and do something, or tells you to try and do something that you really want to do, don't say yes. Say, I won't try, I'll do my best, or I'll do it. And by the way, you all know this, even if you didn't know you knew it. Because when a friend invites you out, and you're just too busy, and they keep pushing because they really want you to go with them, what do you finally say? Well, I'll try and make it. When somebody tells you they're going to try and do something, they're telling you they're not going to do it. Understand this. So for these classes, or any place else, do not try to give a psychic reading. Just allow yourself to. Allow. That's the key. Allow things to happen. Allow your unconscious to speak to you. Allow yourself to see a picture and notice something. Allow. Okay? Does this make sense to everybody? That's one of the most important words in the entire psychic field. Allow. Allow it to be. Allow it to happen. Whatever it is. Allow yourself to feel healing energy. Allow yourself to be open to what people have to say, which doesn't mean you have to accept. Be open to hearing. Be open to considering. But if it doesn't fit with what you are or where you want to be, then simply tell yourself, well, not for me now. I don't think I'll use this. This isn't something I want to use right now. But we'll store it back there in case it ever comes up and it's meaningful. Okay? Now, does anybody have any questions about anything that we have done so far? How many people still feel guilty? Hey, that's a good deal. If you get nothing else out of the class, that's a bonus for your whole life. Now we're going to go into why you're psychic. More drawing on the board. See, this is drawing blackboards. Almost like having a meeting. do like white chalk, it erases so much easier. Yes, but I think yellow shows up better. You're going to get a piece of paper with it anyway, so it doesn't have to show up. Oh, we got a board. We have a conscious mind. It has two functions. Would anybody care to hazard a guess as to what those, we have two major functions, what those functions are? What does the conscious mind do that the unconscious doesn't?
It thinks. It thinks.
Oh, the unconscious thinks too. But it focuses. It focuses. What I'm saying you're listening to with your conscious mind. Your unconscious may be hearing it too. It is. But it is your conscious mind that's focusing. That is one of its two major functions. The unconscious takes in everything else. It's aware not just of what I'm saying, it's aware of your blood pressure, it's aware of her blood pressure, it's aware of the time, it's aware of all kinds of things going on. Because it's not limited. It's unfocused. In fact, it isn't unconscious, it's unfocused conscious. That's what it is. It's more conscious than the conscious, because it's taking in everything. It is the ability to function, to focus, that allows you to have a sense of your own identity, because you can separate yourself from the universe. It is this ability to focus that allows you to learn things, to grow, to create things, to have relationships. All of these are dependent upon the ability of the conscious mind to focus on a narrow band or something. It's what allows you to enjoy a meal or a good wine. It's the ability to focus. Okay? So it's very important. And the unfocused awareness is taking in everything, including what you're focusing on. But it's taking them all in quite indiscriminately. The other major function of the conscious mind is that it can choose. It is only the conscious mind, once you accept responsibility for who you are, that can choose a value or anything else, that can select. The unconscious can run the computerized collection of all the programs you have of value, of worth, of good or bad, of everything else. But it can only run the programs it has as to value. The conscious mind can put a new value in. When we did the triangles, it is your conscious mind that had to say, hey, I don't accept guilt. I want a new value. I want responsibility instead of guilt. I want you to see growth instead of failure. I want you to see my right to be instead of my need for approval. I may enjoy approval, but I don't need it. I need to be. And it's the conscious mind that makes these decisions and tells the unconscious. From then on, it runs those programs. Most of you came into this class, or one I've had before, with a program that's saying I have to be guilty. But it wasn't the program you chose. Somebody who was a parent, a minister, some authority figure gave you that program. As a teacher and a minister, I can show you a better program, and once you've selected it, nobody can overcome it, because it is your right. But it is the conscious mind that makes that selection and that choice. It is the unconscious that then has to deliver it back to you. Okay? So the two major functions of the conscious mind are to focus and to choose. And everything left is multitudinous levels of the unfocused awareness, which for shorthand we simply call the unconscious. That's the start. Now then. We're talking about your biological computer. It's more than just the brain, but we think of it as the brain, but there's more to it than that. Start at the seeds there. It exists in both the conscious and the unconscious. And the first 5 levels of awareness are the basic data levels. You told me most of you have computers, so you know about 1 bit, 1 byte of information. At the first level, it's simply one piece of information. One part of a smell, one part of sight, one part of anything. Going up through the first 5 levels, up to very, very simple programs like the ability to swallow would be within the first 5. And the ability to swallow water would be within the first 5, or whatever else you're swallowing. But even though we have a basic reflex for swallowing that we're born with, we have to learn not to dribble. We have to learn not to take in air. That's why they burp a baby, because the baby takes in air and it swallows. Therefore, we have to develop even the most rudimentary things we have. And these first 5 levels include our senses and the use of the senses. They include the definitions of every word that we have. They include the simplest physical programs of what we can do. And they are in successive levels. And each level includes all of the levels before it. So the second level includes both the second and first, and third is the first, second, and third. But this is all of the basic data that we have, okay? Conscious and unconscious. The 6th level, programs. Every single program you have is within the 6th level. Now, a simple program of definition is in one of the earlier levels, but it is in the 6th level, because the 6th level is everything inside that circle, not just that little band. Everything is the 6th level. Each level, I will repeat, includes everything before it, but goes beyond all the things before it and is more than that. Okay? And it is the conscious mind that can create a new program, because it can learn. It can do these things. All right? But it is also the conscious mind that until we accept authority for who we are, that can accept a new program somebody else has given us. It's still conscious. At this point, though, you can both receive a program given to you by somebody else, and you can create one of your own, and you can nullify one that somebody else is trying to give you. All these things are capable of being done once you accept this authority for yourself. And it's all about programs. Programs of value, programs of ability. I mean, you can learn about skiing by reading a book or tennis, but until you actually get out there and do it, some programs require actual physical activity to completely learn. And by reading, you can eliminate a lot of things that you would have done otherwise that are counterproductive. But you cannot learn to do a thing just by thinking you must do it. It's a physical thing. Seventh level is the self. We used to call it ego, but that has terminology that doesn't apply. Seventh level is where it's I who have my programs. They are my programs. They're specifically me. Consciously and unconsciously, they're me. So the seventh level is where I am distinct, and it's my programs, and I can put them in, and I can unconsciously run them because I have both the conscious and the unconscious I, but it is myself, okay? That was almost like a Z to where I put it. Put it over here, it doesn't have a line under it. That's why we have a broken line around here, because it shows the flow through. The eighth level is also an I. That's the I of the soul. If you believe in reincarnation, actually to me, not believing is more belief than believing. That's me. then every life you live will be a distinct, separate seventh level I, all contained within a greater eighth level I. The soul will contain all of your lives and is more than any one life. But this I of the seventh level, that is this life that you're living. That's what it is. But you still have a soul which is greater than our perception of it. Okay? And if you don't believe in reincarnation, it's still true. It's still true that the seventh level is the physical manifestation. And by this we mean physical, emotional, intellectual, the whole thing that goes with this physical body and bringing on. Of the greater soul, which is the potential of what we can be. And every time we make a choice, we cut off things we will be and we open up new directions in which we can be. So we never limit the amount, just sort of the direction. The ninth level, God consciousness, Christ consciousness, Buddha nature, universal mind. There is no boundary around it. It is the totality. Anybody here read the book The Field? It is the field out of which everything is. And each of us has this same awareness of the totality, of the God force, of everything. Each of us is in the center of it, and with our little seventh level brain, has our awareness. But that ninth level is ours. It's everybody's. Everybody has the same ninth level. There's only one difference. Every one of you is in the same class right this moment, but every one of you has a different perception of it. Every one of you has yourself at the center. And the totality of the ninth level is all awarenesses of it. And each of us has a little tiny piece of awareness of the whole from our own perspective. Okay? Make sense? Yes? No? I was looking at you. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So, what we're talking about in being psychic is, by the way, everything we do in this life is lived out of the seventh level I, conscious and unconscious. But, please remember, these are part of this, and this is part of these. So this seventh level I is always in touch with the universe, one way or the other. We don't have a total command of it, we don't have a total awareness of it, but we are always right in the middle of it. We're in the middle of God. And our awareness is in the middle of us. And when we're being psychic, sometimes all we do is pick up information that we've overheard or that we have coming up from the lower level, and sometimes we allow it to come in from the higher level. It doesn't really matter. Being psychic isn't knowing where it came from, except that you have sort of a mandate that it only come in a beneficial, helpful way. And when you do that, you're getting awareness. What's important is that you allow it to happen, rather than that you understand the mechanism of the universe. Most physicists are just beginning to have a little tiny inkling. I talked about the book The Field. It's a fascinating book. It was written just not too long ago, and a reporter went and interviewed scientists worldwide, especially physicists and biologists. I don't know, maybe I should tell you, I'll take this time to tell you about it, because you're going to be getting a healing class first, so it's probably a good idea anyway. Do you know what tachyon is? Anybody here know anything about physics? If you go to absolute zero, there should be no motion at a temperature of absolute zero. But the physicists have found there is. And so in all of their marvelous equations, they've had to add a little tiny, infinitesimally small quantity of this. The amount of this tachyon that would fill the point of a pin is enough to boil all the ocean of the earth, the potential energy of it. It's an infinitesimal amount, though, in their equations, but they've had to add them because they find there is something there at absolute zero. And they've given the name tachyon to it. There is the speed of light. Faster than the speed of light, nothing in our known universe really exists. Except tachyon, God, the field out of which everything comes, is on the far side of the field. And tachyon is on the far side of the field. And tachyon is neither matter nor energy. It is potential. It is potential to become either matter or energy, coming to the speed of light barrier. Everything that is composed out of tachyon. Tachyon feeds in, and everything has field. I hope I'm not getting too confused. The large field is the field of which all other fields are contained. Your liver has a field. Your cornea has a field, every part of your eye has a field, and all of the ones together combine to make a larger field, which is the field of your eye, your brain, your blood, your lymph glands. Everything has fields, everything. And these fields supply the essence of what is needed to be that. They supply the matter to be your tongue or your arm or your eye or your blood. And these fields simply keep generating these and renewing these things because we have to keep renewing what we are. Trees do, people do, everybody does. It's all a matter of a continuous renewal. And it is tachyon supplies the raw essence out of which your field generates whatever it is that it's generating. Okay? Or the field of a tree generates a field. Have I lost you, or do you follow what I'm saying? You follow? Okay. When people pray, they have discovered, particularly some people are very good at it, they can generate more of this and create healing. Fascinatingly enough, they have discovered that natural crystals and natural things that are growing, for instance, linen tablecloths enhance the taste of food and they help it not spoil as easily. Man discovered this long before we had refrigeration. Silk does the same thing. They do it to a greater degree than cotton does for some reason or other. Linen and silk are especially good at enhancing and bringing in more tachyon. It's as if they almost act as a tachyon magnet so that they attract more of it to come in. Tachyon has one very interesting thing. It can only create what should be. It cannot, it's not a destructive force. It is only a positive force. Now, once the thing is created, we can misuse it. But the tachyon never comes in a way that is not beneficial to existence, to life, to the whole of everything. And the book talks about why homeopathy works. They can take and reduce in your dilution of a substance. They keep diluting and diluting and diluting, but they keep an essence, a field. The thing is, the field stays even when the essence is diluted, and they have the field of the substance even when they have diluted it to the point that there is not a single molecule left in the water. The field still exists, and therefore that's why homeopathy can work, and some of these medicines that don't have anything in them can actually heal, because they're healing with the field, which still attracts the tachyon. They've discovered another thing. Finally, after many, many, many years, and it wasn't one of the major scientists, but one of their students, I think, that came up with a way to measure light in such an infinitesimal amount that they are actually able to measure when there is light, when it exists, where we can't even see it. Very, very small amount. And one of the things they've discovered is light always has light. always. But death doesn't. And when somebody is dying of cancer or heart disease or something, whatever organ is affected, they can see the dimming. They can measure the dimming of the light. And one of the interesting things about tachyon is, so long as there is light, tachyon can build it up. But once it's gone, if a field actually runs out of being, if the light goes out, it can't be restored even with tachyon. Tachyon can only act on something that is, to enhance it and keep it going, but it cannot give back what's gone. And one of the things I find fascinating in discovering this was that, and these are scientists, these aren't metaphysicians, these are actual scientists that are showing all these things. The ancient Egyptians had two words talking about a long time. They had a term for forever, which meant a very, very long time. But they had a term for eternity. And their term, sometimes I wonder how they knew what they knew, was so long as light exists. And that was their term for eternity. And it was distinct from forever. They didn't mean the same thing. So they would frequently ask for a thing to be forever and for eternity. Anyway, one of the scientists, he's in the field, said, we have finally actually discovered God. We have seen that God exists. So that the larger field supplies everything that is. And now they're beginning to wonder. This is not at the point of proving or anything, but it is a point of questioning. It is possible that our brain does not store memory. It is because we know our memory exists in the field. It is quite possible that what our memory is a marvelous mechanism for retrieving memory from the field where it is stored. The field is the ninth level. It's God. It is the universal mind. It's everything. And we're in touch with it. And we have a function, by the way, which we are not fulfilling. Because we're supposed to be caretakers of the earth, not users of it. The original word dominion, man given dominion over the earth, it meant man was into man's hand was put the stewardship. Because the word dominion also meant well-being. In the Jewish, the ancient Egyptian, and all. This is the meaning of dominion. We have distorted it and subverted it into meaning, we get to use everything. We're not doing what we're here for. Anyway. Is there something else that you would like me to talk about? I never know where I'm going to go. So certain things I know I'm going to cover. I did have this to hand out to you. Oh yes, I did want to mention. You'll see down at the bottom there's a little circle with an X in it. This whole thing, I was reading a Buddhist newsletter, and in the Buddhist newsletter, they had this ridiculous thing, and I looked at it and said, good heavens, that's why people have got all this distortion. What they had was something like this. And they were thinking about your spiritual self being the little tiny thing in the middle. It's deep inside you. That's deep. That kind of deep. They got it backwards. And because they got it backwards, you've been hearing all of these things about being non-attached to something. Right, you're supposed to be non-attached. What it says right here is, I don't have to be attached to my programs, or my emotions or such. I am more than they are. I should have them, I should use them, but they shouldn't be pulling my strings. I should be non-attached. Non-attached does not mean non-existent. But because they got it backwards, and because a lot of metaphysicians have been teaching it backwards, they don't understand. Okay? It's very important to understand this field is the larger part. It's not this little tiny thing in here away from the rest. It's not a hard nut kernel that you have to go in and find. It's something you have to open yourself to. Okay? Because it's already found you. Yeah, just pass out. One of the things I'll tell you about when we get to fourth class is the fact that we have a medicine wheel in our yard. It's created by a Cherokee medicine man. At a time of harmonic convergence, I told him I wanted a medicine wheel, and I was going to create one. He said, okay, I'll be there instead of being someplace else that he's going to be. And we had about 60 people showed up the first time, each one, and he took each one individually as they placed their stones. Of course, we started with the 4 direction stones and his center stone, which we did earlier in the day. And then there were about 30 people that couldn't be there, but had left stones, and he blessed those stones just as a group first, and then the people came a little later. And then during the following year, I'd say another 30, 60 people showed up, put stones in the wheel, and he had a ceremony a year later, and new people put stones in it, and he died after that, so he's not having any more, but people keep putting stones in the wheel. We show them how, and each one takes the time to walk it, to place their own stone, and to ask for what it is they want. We encourage very strongly that people ask for becoming rather than getting. A few people ask for getting. That's sort of the younger soul's idea. And it's amazing the things they get, but I think becoming's still the wiser thing. You're welcome to come out any time and put a stone in. The rainbow ended there. 17 years before he put the wheel in, my neighbor called me and said, do you realize that I am seeing the end of a big rainbow coming across the sky, and it's in your yard? Well, I'd never seen the end of a great big rainbow. I thought it was crazy. He said, well, go look. So I went out and I looked, and it was. So I went back in the house and I grabbed my camera and I had slide film in it, and I took a slide. And for some reason or other, Michael and I both, for many, many, many years, thought that rainbow ended in the front yard. Actually, I thought it ended in the driveway. I thought it was kind of tacky, but better than nothing. I mean, I'll take being at the end of the rainbow. Who wouldn't? But 3 years after he put the medicine wheel in, I found the slide, and of course he put the center of the medicine wheel exactly where the rainbow ended in the backyard. So I always felt like I lived at the end of the rainbow. Anyway, I just want to let you know about that. And for those who are interested, we'll give you some maps so you can find our place. And we'll probably have a potluck sometime this summer. Everybody can come out if they want, or people can come out individually, whatever. The medicine wheel is 25 feet across. I mean, it's a great thing. There are over 500 stones in it now. There's a stone from Machu Picchu. There's a piece of the Berlin Wall. Stones from Tibet, Russia. Sent a stone back to us from Hawaii. Callie sent one, told a couple married who went there on a honeymoon. We sent one over there too. It's been connected to a great big medicine wheel up in the Bighorn Mountains. We didn't even know he existed, but it was a whole special story, maybe about who met me there. And we both knew that's why we were there, so. Anyway, it's a nice place. It's a place to put your energy into caring about healing the earth and those on it, because that's what this wheel is dedicated to. So the wheel in the Bighorn Mountains has 28 spokes. It's like one down on the plains of Nazca. It's another 28. I can't tell you that it's exactly the same, but they're both 28 spokes. Whereas the one we have just as the north, south, east, and west. And we drum in every New Year's with a Lakota medicine man. He comes out and we drum in the New Year's, along with anybody else that shows up. And
on that night, the house just kind of goes and expands and dies afterwards.
And but you enter from the east if you're Cherokee, which is what Wari was. But the Lakota enter from the west. They both walk the same clockwise direction. But the Lakota come in and leave at the west, and the Cherokee come in and leave at the east. And there are a lot of interesting things. Anyway, we'll tell you more about that. I wrote a poem. I've written 3 in my life. One when I was about 10 years old, very patriotic, about Washington, Lincoln, and flags and things like that. But don't know what inspired me, but something did. I wrote one about just a very personal matter in my life, which would actually have very little meaning to anybody other than me. And then this one. And in this one, I didn't even really sit down and write it. It's just that it was there, so I had the brains to go in and get something to write it on. And I was sitting out in the yard. It's probably about 3 in the morning. I don't go to bed till 3, 5 o'clock in the morning usually. I don't get up until then. Isn't that wonderful? I get to do that, and that's my time. And you're doing this again. You're blocking again. You can go ahead and block. It's all right. But I've told you, so it's up to you. Anyway, I was sitting out there. It had rained earlier. It was the time of year in which there were spider webs, and there was this wonderful web that you could see all these raindrops on. I had this little striped cat who loved my milk, and I was drinking a cup of milk, and he was sticking his paw in and taking his share out. And the rain had gone, and you know how sometimes it's just absolutely beautiful, and you've got clouds with the moon coming through them as they move across it and all, and the trees. It was just beautiful. And it just sort of all came together, and so this is what this is. And this really expresses pretty much where I'm coming from. If all that exists is this moment in which I can be fully alive, if I can reach out with caring to another being, then this moment exists as one drop of beauty in the sea of infinity, and it is enough. If all else is illusion, no heaven to come, no God to satisfy, if existence is a mad joke of the senseless universe, then my joy, my wonder, and my love will fill it. And it is enough. A cat's paw reaching, a tree silhouetted by sunset, the magic of a spider's web, the smell of wood smoke, the world reflected in a raindrop. Any one of these is the existence of God proven, and it is enough. I just never remember the order in which it came. Anyway, so that's my point. And I do want to end, as I almost always end, with this thing. I'll catch you on the way out here. But I want to tell you a little story, which isn't mine. This story goes back to reinforce where we were. It's another man's story, and I like it very much. It's the story of a father who had 2 sons born. One was an incurable optimist, and the other was an incurable pessimist. And he spent 12 years doing everything he could think of to try and get these 2 sons off of these extreme programs with no luck whatsoever. And finally, just before Christmas, he came up with what he thought was the solution. And he said, I know what I'm going to do. So he waited until each boy was asleep in his room on Christmas Eve. He went into the room of the incurable pessimist. And into this room, he put sports equipment, music equipment, clothes, a moped, computer, everything that a 12-year-old kid could possibly want was in this room. And he said, that ought to do it for him. Then he went down the hall to the room of the incurable optimist, and he filled his room up right to the level of the bed with horse manure. He said, that ought to take care of him. Well, he waited in the morning until he heard sounds of stirring in the boys' rooms. And he waited about a half an hour. And he said, this has just got to have worked. He walked down, looked through the keyhole into the room of the incurable pessimist, and he saw this kid standing in the middle of the room. I don't know what the catch is, but there's always a catch. Now, I'm not doing nothing until I find out what the catch is. And the father threw his arms in there and he said, he's helpless. But surely I've reached the other wall before he even got to the room. He heard whistling. Happy sounds. He gets down there, he looks through the keyhole. This kid has got a very happy look on his face. He's whistling, he's got a shovel in his hand, and he is going like this. He's throwing the stuff from one side of the room to the other. He throws open the door and he says, son, what is the matter with you? Can't you see that this room is filled with horse manure? And the kid says, yeah, I figure with all this shit, there's just got to be a pony. I'm looking for the pony. So I hope this week now on you will look